Folks, the big game draws are right around the corner, so I wanted to make a quick video here to address them and make sure you're getting the most out of those draws and to make sure that those draws are not inadvertently ruining a bunch of potential opportunities you could have as a hunter. Potential opportunities to just have awesome adventures and potential opportunities to learn a ton about hunting, whatever species you're interested in. One thing I've noticed over the years, some of the best hunters across species, across seasons, across geography, a lot of them are not focused on state big game draws. I would say that in general, these draws are not centric to their overall plan in terms of the hunts that they're gonna have in the next 2, 3, 4 years. Sure, they go on draw hunts, but it's not what moves the needle for them and drives their scheduling process. In this video, I'm gonna delve into that and explain to you why that is. After dealing with hundreds of hunters over my career as a guide and outfitter, I've pinpointed several specific mistakes people make when considering these draws. A lot of people think that this is the only way for them to draw specific tags, and they believe by putting in the draws, that's the most economical way for them to draw these tags. That's actually untrue in a lot of cases, so I'm gonna go through an exact example. We're gonna talk about gambling, expected value, a bunch of nerdy things, and I'll show you that in a lot of cases, you'd be better off taking your application fee and going to Vegas with it. The overarching problem that I see is that these state big game draws have created two types of hunters. You have what I call reactive hunters and you have proactive hunters. Reactive hunters are hunters that live by the draw. A lot of them don't even know if they're gonna hunt this year because they just base it on what tags they draw. When you ask these hunters, hey, what are you doing in 2023? What are you doing in 2024? Their response is generally, just depends on what I draw. These hunters are missing out on a ton of opportunities, and I'm gonna dive deep into that. Now, proactive hunters use draws generally to just augment their overall hunting strategy. Draws do not dictate the momentum or the overall path of their hunting strategy and schedule. All draws do is they spice it up a little bit when these folks happen to have some luck on their side. All right, so what's the big deal? What's wrong with being just a reactive hunter, taking the draw tags that you get, and that dictating your hunting schedule and basically the trajectory of the hunts you have in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? The first just practical one is scheduling and capacity in life to deal with the tags when you draw them. Let's just take the example that I'm sure a bunch of you are in. You're waiting to draw that once in a lifetime Arizona Strip monster mule deer tag, right? Let's say that you just drew it. Now beforehand, did you know that you're supposed to be a best man in a wedding this fall? You're having a kid this fall. You're getting married this fall. Maybe you're getting divorced this fall. Life stuff like this always jumps up. I saw it a ton when I was guiding. I've guided over a dozen hunts where the client had waited 20, 25 years to draw a tag or had, 1 out of 300 or 1 out of 400 chance of drawing the tag. In 70 to 80% of those situations, that hunter had something going on in their life that affected their ability to either prepare for that hunt or enjoy the hunt. And really both of those are probably equal value. You draw those tags, and if you've got something that pulls you away mentally, you've got other obligations, that sucks, man. And the thing is if you ask yourself right now, if you drew that once in a lifetime sheep tag, once in a lifetime moose tag, the Arizona Strip tag, you're gonna say to your buddies and to yourself in the mirror, when I draw that tag, I'm gonna drop everything, right? I'm gonna take 45 days off to scout. I'm gonna hunt the full 12 days of the season. We're gonna go hard. I'm gonna dedicate my whole life to it. Well, I've seen the data set for the majority of the folks. That's not reality. You have life things that pop up, and because you can't plan when you're gonna draw a lot of these tags, it's an issue that you have to consider. I recently did a podcast with Robbie Denning on the J Scott Outdoors podcast, and we talked about this problem in the context of actually drawing 2 phenomenal tags in the same season. And I can hear you right now, you're saying, oh, I'm crying, you draw 2 great tags. Well, here's the reality of it. I've seen this also a bunch over my years of guiding. I've had guys draw a goat tag and a sheep tag, or a moose tag and a phenomenal mule deer tag in the same season. And usually what happens in these situations is the experience and the preparation for both of those hunts declines greatly. So they don't get out what you'd hope they would get out of those hunts. And Robbie talked about that on his hunts. Like, one of his most trying seasons was he had 2 phenomenal tags, so he ended up splitting his effort and time in both of those hunts, and he didn't get the most out of those hunts. So you have to be wary of that, and you have to realize that if you're in this reactive hunter category in the context of the draw, this is a big downside. All right, let's keep using this example for the second problem I'm gonna mention. You've drawn this Arizona strip mule deer tag and you're super pumped. But guess what? You've been so focused on that over the years, you haven't hunted mule deer yet. Or you've hunted, in the last 10 years, you've hunted mule deer twice. You kind of know what they look like. That's essentially the situation you're in. So if you think about it just from a skill set standpoint, you're not going to get what you might have been able to get out of this tag if you were better prepared and had more experience in the field. Check this video out right here on my channel, why 5% of the hunters kill 95% of the elk. I talk about 5 or 6 reasons why certain elk hunters are way more capable than their average counterpart. All of those factors are deteriorated if you're a reactive hunter. You're really not able to learn the behavior of certain species. You're not able to focus on a certain geography. You're not able to learn how to deal with the stress and anxiety of some of these mountain hunts. And on the base level, on a lot of these hunts, you're just not ready logistically to take on these hunts. You know, you may not have the right vehicle. You may not have the right camp equipment. All that stuff factors in. Essentially, you're just underprepared because you haven't had any chance to build up that skill set because you've just been waiting for this tag. How common this is kind of blows me away. Let's think about an analogy, right? I want to raft down the Grand Canyon. My wife's a huge fan of that trip, and she's always talking about it. She did it as a kid. So I put in for the draw. I get lucky, I draw that permit. And by the way, if you know what the system is and I'm like bastardizing it or whatever, don't worry about it. Just for example's sake, let's keep going here, all right? So I draw this permit for once in a lifetime rafting trip to go down the Grand Canyon with my family. And I don't know shit about rafting. So I have 4 months to prepare for what turns out is a pretty extreme rafting trip. Almost everybody would look at that is just straight up insanity. But hunters do it all the time. And reactive hunters, hunters singularly focused on the draw, do that exact behavior over and over. The third issue with being a reactive hunter, and this is probably the most interesting to me because it just dives into a bunch of behavioral biases. There's this giant misperception in the hunting community that the cheapest way and the only way for blue collar folks to hunt certain species is to put in for these state big game draws. In many situations, this is just factually incorrect. It is wrong. Not for all draws, but a lot of draws for certain people based on their residency. This is just a factually incorrect statement. We're gonna nerd out here, guys. So bear with me, a little context. Let's talk about what these draws really represent. So what are you looking for whenever you put in for these coveted tags in these state game draws? You're looking for limited access, better managed wildlife populations, so more of them and higher quality, and a better hunting experience. Well, if you look at the market for hunting opportunities, private hunting opportunities, paying a trespass fee to hunt a ranch, having a hunting lease, going on a guided hunt, all of those things that you can go out and buy, you're looking for essentially the same thing, right? A lot of animals and higher quality experience and less hunting pressure around. Yes, on the guided front specifically, there's accommodations, the experience of the guide, that is additional, but having some experience in the guiding world, the vast majority of the cost on the guiding front is not the guide and accommodations, it's actually the access to the animals. Even if it's in a public area, a lot of what you're paying for is access into areas with horses and mules or, just the logistics. You're paying for all that, and that's access, and that's really the same thing you're trying to get when you're trying to draw one of these awesome tags. So really when you're putting in for these draws, think about it this way. If you're putting in for a preference point draw, which is basically, each year you get a preference point and then the tags go to the hunters with the highest preference points, right? That's really just a payment plan for what you're looking for, right? You pay into it every year, you buy the hunting license, you do the application fee. That's just a payment plan for what you're wanting, right? And then totally random draws, all that is just gambling in hopes that you get what you're looking for, right? That's what it is. And I know I'm gonna get some comments by, public land only hunters that are upset by that idea, but I just don't see the difference. So why am I harping on this, and why do I think that you need to acknowledge that this is the same thing? One, the vast majority of hunters way overestimate the value of these draw tags. Two, I think all hunters, including blue collar guys, young folks that are just struggling, everybody across the economic spectrum probably needs to integrate more kind of pay to play options. And it might take some planning. You might have to plan out 4 or 5 years to go on, X guided hunt or X trespass fee hunt or whatever. But I think a lot of hunters need to integrate that more into their overall hunting plan. And the third biggest one is you have to look at it in the context of this so you can figure out when and where it actually makes sense to put in for these draws. If you don't know the value of what you're actually essentially buying through these draws or gambling to potentially get in these draws, how can you decide where it makes sense to draw and where it doesn't? All right, time to go full nerd for 5-6 minutes here, guys. I'm gonna run you through the math on just a straightforward example of when the draw does not make sense. And so this will give you kind of some context and maybe a model to think about some of these draws you're putting in for that really don't make a lot of sense for you. Let's take non-resident desert sheep in Colorado. The chances of you drawing this tag as a non-resident is roughly 1 out of 2,000, and it's gonna cost you around 40 bucks. How that breaks down is you got a $10 application fee, but you also have to buy a qualified license, which is the cheapest option is 90 bucks. You've got to spread that across 3 or 4 species that you're gonna put in for, so I just allocate 30 bucks to the desert sheep draw, right? So it costs you $40 to put in for that draw. Out in the market, a good desert sheep hunt right now, you can go out and pay to play for $45,000, $50,000. Sounds like a lot of money, but that's basically what the market's at right now. Obviously, if you just go out and buy the hunt, there's some huge advantages. One, you have a lot of just flexibility on your schedule, right? You can essentially do it when you can do it. Yes, you might have to do it a couple years from now, or a year ahead of time schedule it, but it's not just gonna pop up and you gotta go, right? So that's a huge advantage. But let's just say there's no value there for the pay to play option. But on the pay to play option, you do get accommodations, guide, logistics, you don't have to pay for fuel, like a lot of the cost of the hunt is gonna be covered. So let's just chop off 10 grand, right? And say that the value of a desert sheep hunt is $40,000. That's basically my metric, right? So if you draw this tag in Colorado, that tag that you draw is worth $40,000. So if you really want to get in the weeds on this of how to analyze this decision-making process, you can look it up. There's this thing called Kelly criterion, utility functions, all these different economic concepts you can dive deep into, but I'm going to use the most simple one and the one that's going to make the most sense. So we're going to look at expected value of putting in for this desert sheep hunt tag. The value you get if you draw the tag is $40,000. The chances of drawing that tag are 1 in 2,000. So all you got to do to get expected value is do 40,000 divided by 2,000. So the expected value of putting in for this tag is $20. The expected value of $1 you put into this draw is half that back, right? 50 cents, okay? So it's 0.5. So I can already hear you guys giving me the rebuttals. Well, it doesn't matter what your expected value is or whatever. This is my only chance because I could never afford that type of hunt. Or you might be saying, I would never pay $40,000 for a sheep hunt or $50,000 for a sheep hunt. Okay, so that second rebuttal that, you just would never pay that much for a sheep hunt, it actually just reduces the expected value of putting into this draw. So that's actually gonna just make this look worse once I get through the example. So just hold that thought. On the first rebuttal, I could never pay that much for the hunt, so this draw is my only option. That's just factually incorrect because you can go to Vegas and gamble. So let's just see what it looks like if you take that $40 and go to Vegas. So even if you're a poor blackjack player and you go to Vegas, your expected value on $1 bet is probably gonna be around 80 cents, right? So way better than this cheap draw. If you're a decent blackjack player, your expected value on $1 in Vegas is gonna be like 95 cents. Now, if you just wanna play a totally random game in Vegas that doesn't take any skill at all, you can just go to the roulette table, put it on red, and your expected value on $1 is gonna be 90 cents. So you can see that these Vegas games are way better odds. You can't rebut by saying I'm putting in that draw because it's the only way that I could potentially draw that tag. I could never afford it. Well, here's the deal. You could take the same $40 and go bet it in Vegas, and you actually have a better chance to win enough money to just buy that hunt. So don't extend this argument I just made to all draws, okay? All I'm doing is giving you a system to think about the draws you should put in for and the draws you shouldn't put in for, and to dismantle this myth that draws are always the most economical solution. A lot of times they're not. I obviously cherry-picked one here, but there's a lot of draws that people put in for that fall into that category. I've looked through all the stuff that I've put in for in the last even 4 or 5 years, and I've put into draws in a lot of situations that are exactly like this. It made no sense for me to put in for them. Now, draws where I was a resident, this was universally not the case. A lot of times there actually had a positive expected value. You know, $1 I put in, the expected value might be $1.50. So draws were the most economical solution, and they were better than gambling or other pay-to-play options. So this just gives you some context to decide where it makes sense. If you don't look at it that way, you're gonna waste a shit pile of money on application fees that don't make any sense. You're literally better off just going and gambling. So the natural question is, why do we keep doing this? Why do I personally blow hundreds, probably thousands of dollars over the last decade on draws that didn't make economical sense? We see all this social media, all these magazines, all these YouTube videos, awesome animals, awesome experiences, and a lot of them are from draw units. And the big bias comes in play because if people draw a coveted tag, a tag that takes a very long time to draw, they don't care about posting it everywhere. People will tell you exactly where they came from. They came from the Arizona Strip. They came from 44 in Colorado. This bull came from X unit in Arizona. This ram came from X unit in Arizona. People will tell you exactly where they came from. But on the other side of things, when we're talking about easy to draw tags, over the counter tags, that type of hunting, one, a lot of the real quality animals, you may not even ever see pictures of them, right? Because people are so private about those areas, because if they give it away, there's gonna be more pressure on the tags there, right? The other component is, even if there's pictures of them out there on social media, nobody's gonna talk about the units it came from. And a lot of times you're not gonna see the back, you're not gonna be able to figure out where the animal came from. You get this total biased perspective and biased data set as a hunter. So you associate these phenomenal experiences and phenomenal animals only with draw units. This selection bias would come out all the time when I was outfitting. I would get calls and someone would tell me, I drew, X tag and X unit, and I can't wait to kill my 200-inch mule deer. All they've ever seen from that specific unit is 200-inch mule deer, because that's what all the media portrays comes from that unit, and it must be easy because it appears that all the data set about that unit is these massive deer. Well, that's not the case. So the sad part about this bias that I've seen time and time again is that people way overvalue these draw tags and these draw hunts relative to their counterpart. And the thing is, a lot of these other hunts, like these hunts that you can go on every couple years or even maybe every year, they're down here and they're up here, right? And yes, there's a differential, but because of this bias, we think the differential's like this instead of actually being more like this, right? Problem with that is, in order to get this hunt, we have to give up a lot of these, right? Because in most cases, you can't build up points, you can't put in for the random draw if you're hunting these tags down here, right? So what happens is a lot of people will miss decades, if not longer, 10, 15, 20 awesome hunts of this quality in hopes of getting a hunt that they think is up here, but it's actually just right here. If you guys disagree with any of the stuff that I have so far said, please leave a comment below. It's amazing how much I learn from your comments. There's so many knowledgeable hunters that watch this channel, and they always have insights that I didn't think of. So the worst bias that comes into play with these state big game draws is the sunk cost fallacy. And what that is we just assume because we've been putting in for 16 years for X species and X state, it just makes sense for us to keep putting in. This fallacy costs us a lot of money. And there's a couple reasons why this is. One, just game populations change and tag quotas change, right? So something that you thought you were going to eventually get, you were eventually going to get it when you got to 15 preference points or 17 preference points or whatever. Now, if you keep down that path, you're never going to draw the tag. The point creep is just going to keep it away from you, right? But because you've spent all this time already applying, it's very hard for you to just throw that away and say, I'm no longer in that draw. But that's the rational thing to do. At this point, does it make sense for me to keep putting in for this draw? Don't calculate that with the bias of, I've been putting in for this draw for a dozen years or 15 years, I gotta keep doing it. Because in a lot of situations, that doesn't make sense. Another example is these states always change their laws around these draws, and they change allocations. Just recently, Wyoming changed their allocations to 90% resident, 10% non-resident. That crushes a lot of these non-resident draws. So it's going to be hard even for me personally, but when I look at those stats, and I've got my spreadsheet here, when I look at the data for what it's going to look like if I put in for a lot of draws that I've built up a dozen or more preference points for, it makes no sense. But it's so hard for me psychologically just to throw those out and quit applying. But that's the rational thing to do. If you've only added additional applications in additional states, but you haven't removed states and you haven't removed specific applications for species, you're making some mistakes. For sure, in the last 5 or 6 years, things have changed where almost all hunters should have stopped applying for certain species in certain states based on their residency. So if you haven't done that at all, you're for sure falling into this sunk cost fallacy and you're blowing money on draws that make no sense. So this is the saddest part of the sunk cost fallacy, and if you get anything from this video, I want it to be this. When I was outfitting, I had groups of 4 or 5 folks that came out and hunted with me year after year, right? Different species, different camps, guided, drop camps, whatever. But I saw them year over year, the same group of buddies. There were situations where I had 4 hunters who hunted together all the time, and then they came for a specific deer hunt, 2nd or 3rd rifle season. It's an easy to draw tag, maybe took 1 point for them, something like that. But their 4th buddy would not go on that hunt because he already had 6 points or 7 points and he didn't want to blow those to go on this hunt with his buddies. And in several of those situations, that segment of hunters that did go, they hit the conditions right, they hit the beginning of the rut right, they hit the migration right, whatever, for whatever reason, and they had world-class, phenomenal mule deer hunting that I can almost guarantee that hunter that didn't come and was holding on to his points will probably never have in his life, even if he draws some coveted tag 15 years from now. Because of that sunk cost deal, he just couldn't deal with the thought of giving up those points. These biases put your preference points and the draw on a crazy high pedestal. Do not undervalue the non-draw aspects, right? Like your schedule is right, you've got the right group to hunt with, the area, those sort of variables are really important. Don't crap on those variables to wait for some hunt that's 15 points. I would go far as to say if you have those variables, like you have a great group to hunt with, your schedule's right, that area, in a lot of situations, let's say that hunt takes 2 or 3 mule deer points, right? But you have 15 mule deer points, I would still recommend to you, go on that hunt. Just burn the 10, 12, 15 mule deer points and go on the 3-point hunt, because those other things matter more. That's how extreme my view is, and that is based on the fact that I've seen so many people miss awesome opportunities because they are sunk on that thought of how much value they have in preference points. If you haven't seen it yet, I recommend you go check out this video right now, why 5% of hunters kill 95% of the elk. There's a lot of topics there that I also discussed in this video, but there I get a little bit deeper, and what you'll find is that if you go through that video and then you think about these draw strategies, they're both gonna support each other. So go check it out, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.